I have stood up for you by Carlos Montezuma. Being of your blood through thick and thin, I have stood up for you. When the world's most devilish intrigue of humanity was set and was coiling around you tighter and tighter, I have stood up for you. When public sentiment was against you and sent you to oblivion, I have stood up for you. When the country was hysterically enraged for defending your loved ones and your birthright of priority, I have stood up for you. When you were tagged as Indians and outlawed creatures, I have stood up for you. Haunted and hunted on thy domain with no chance of redress, but doomed as though thy fate, I have stood up for you. When you were described and pictured and cartooned as cruel and savage, I have stood up for you. When prejudice, hate, and scorn sounded the keynote against you, I have stood up for you. When starving and naked, at the verge of your annihilation by swords in the hands of criminals, I have stood up for you. When the pale faces said there was no hope for you, I have stood up for you. When you were condemned and regulated to the reservation system of hell, I have stood up for you. When in prison and in bondage, when you could neither speak nor see, I have stood up for you. When decreed by the people across the sea that you could neither learn nor be taught, I have stood up for you. When it was put down black and white that you could neither work nor support yourselves and that you were lazy and worthless, I have stood up for you. When politics and greed were working you for all that you were worth, I have stood up for you. When everything you possessed was disappearing and your personal rights ignored, I have stood up for you. As the Indian Bureau, like an octopus, sucked your very life blood, I have stood up for you. For your freedom and citizenship by the abolishment of the Indian Bureau, I have stood up for you. When the Indian Bureau says, were you freed, you would starve and be cheated only to feed its 7,000 employees, I have stood up for you. When you were judged incompetent for freedom and citizenship by the Indian Bureau, I have stood up for you. God knows that I am with thee day and night. That is why I have stood up for you. It might have been self-sacrifice. It might have been the hand of God leading me. Whatever it was, you have proven yourselves to be what I have stood up for you to be.